A few days ago, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs did something that former chairman of the Joint Chief has never done, and that is speak out strongly and critically of a sitting commander-in-chief, Admiral Mike Mullen, calling the time we are in when Donald Trump is sending troops to beat up Americans on the streets of America, called it an inflection point, and it certainly is how that's shaping up now.
Yeah, Admiral Mullen said, "I can no longer remain silent." It's long been the unofficial policy of military leaders not to speak out about a sitting president. The dam has broken on that. We're seeing a number of current and retired senior military leaders now speaking out, either in direct or implied criticism of President Trump and his administration's recent actions against protesters. Let's start with former Secretary of Defense General Jim Mattis. After more than a year and a half of silence, General Mattis writes in a letter posted in The Atlantic this, quote, "I have watched this week's unfolding events angry and appalled. The words equal justice under law are carved in the pediment of the United States Supreme Court. This is precisely what protesters are rightly demanding. It is a wholesome and unifying demand, one that all of us should be able to get behind." General Mattis continues, "When I joined the military some 50 years ago, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Never did I dream that troops taking the same oath would be ordered under any circumstance to violate the constitutional rights of their fellow citizens, much less to provide a bizarre photo op for the elected commander-in-chief with military leadership standing alongside." General Mattis goes on to criticize comments by the current Defense Secretary, Mark Esper. He writes, "We must reject any thinking of our cities as a battle space that our uniformed military is called upon to, quote, dominate. At home, we should use our military only when requested to do so on very rare occasions by state governors. Militarizing our response, as we witnessed in Washington, D.C., sets up a conflict, a false conflict, between the military and civilian society." General Mattis writes, "Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people, does not even pretend to try. Instead, he tries to divide us. We are witnessing the consequences of 3 years of this deliberate effort. We are witnessing the consequences of 3 years without mature leadership. We can unite without him, drawing on the strengths inherent in our civil society. This will not be easy, as the past few days have shown, but we owe it to our fellow citizens, to past generations that bled to defend our promise, and to our children. We can come through this trying times stronger and with a renewed sense of purpose and respect for one another. We must reject and hold accountable those in office who would make a mockery of our Constitution. At the same time, we must remember Lincoln's better angels and listen to them as we work to unite. Only by adopting a new path, which means in truth returning to the original path of our founding ideals, will we again be a country admired and respected at home and abroad." So, Joe, let's remind everyone that it's General James Mattis, who served until December of 2018 when he resigned as the Secretary of Defense under President Trump. He has been offered chances in the last year and a half to speak out about President Trump, has declined those generally, saying it's bad for democracy. But as you can see in that letter he wrote yesterday, the statement he put out, he now believes what he's seeing out of the White House, what he's seeing in the streets, is much worse for democracy than not speaking out.
Well, and the United States of America saw one military leader after another step forward and actually speak out about what happened on June the 1st. And maybe this is an overstatement. Maybe this is being a bit melodramatic, but I don't think so. I believe that in the coming years, students that go to West Point and other military academies will look back at the events of June the 1st, 2020, and they will see it to be an inflection point, and they will see the examples of military leaders, bad choices made on one military leader's part after another, a terrible decision made by the Secretary of Defense to go, as he said, inspect a facility, a bathroom in Lafayette Park, when in fact he ended up in, as General Mattis called it, a bizarre photo op. So often, especially in the age of Donald Trump, leaders, thought leaders, political leaders, media leaders, they don't stop and recognize a moment that's happening, because we've all been so numbed by the chaos that has been swirling around the White House and around Washington, D.C. since January the 20th, 2017. Mike Mullen recognized that we were at an inflection point on that day, on June the 1st. And of course, we've seen over the past several days, we've seen an extraordinary memo from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, which we will get to. And of course, yesterday, we saw an extraordinary statement from James Mattis, a former Secretary of Defense. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.